Welcome to my first patch rundown video slash stream. This is going to be something I want to do for every patch from here out. Hopefully the audio levels are about right. I'm still kind of getting used to this whole thing, but let's just jump into it. So these are the patch notes for the first post Call of the Mountain expansion. The first post Call of the Mountain patch it. And so we've got a few things to look at, some card changes, a Lee Sin update, which I'm really interested in, and yeah, some really interesting Gauntlet rules that I'm definitely going to be getting some gameplay in starting this weekend. So, starting just with the card updates, pretty standard stuff. They're mentioning why there aren't too many changes in this patch, especially to new cards. They're kind of still letting that settle before they actually want to jump in and make changes to the newer cards. So next patch we're kind of looking at a harder level up for Aurelion Soul, which means probably just requiring more attack on board. They may change it to require you to play Celestial cards so that his level up condition actually really works alongside his so that his level up condition is tied in directly to the level up reward of making your Celestials cost 0. Adding escalation to Hush's repeatable cost, that's really just to prevent people from stalling out the game. I don't know if that's really necessary. I think there are other ways they could have gone about this. I think mana cheating in general is something they may need to look into. That's become a massive problem for Hearthstone, and so the approach that Hearthstone's really taken with that is preventing cards a lot of the time from being reduced below 1. So that might be a better way to go about, like changing Cloud Drinker, for example, but we'll kind of see how that works. Grandfather Removal giving more hugs. This is interesting. I think Grandfather Removal is kind of an interesting card. 8 mana 8/4 is a really weak stat line, but if you kind of consider the 4 health buff to be a part of him, 8 mana 8/8 is a bit better, especially when the keywords Removal has work really well with his stat line, right? You love having Overwhelm on high attack minions, and you love having Spell Shield on your big threats, and with that Overwhelm, the 8/4 is really a big threat. With regards to giving more hugs, I think they may make his effect a support activatable, so it's repeatable. They may make it target multiple units, or they may just increase the health buff. I think they're probably aiming to change the effect itself in terms of power, rather than actually focusing in on Removal's stat line itself, because I'm happy with Removal to be kind of where he is right now, and I think he fits kind of a niche with his keywords. So we'll have to see the way they go about that. Ezreal's level up got nerfed a little bit. This has been discussed quite a bit. Ezreal's one of the hardest champions to level up, with the requirement of 10 targets on enemies. I think Bilgewater implemented a pair of really good tools for him to accelerate his level up condition in Make It Rain and Riptide Rex. I believe in the bug fixes section, yeah, they have, so they've made a change for Riptide Rex's Ezreal level up. What I'm not sure about is whether that is fixing the bug in a positive way, or kind of deciding that the bug was intended, where basically Ezreal would only receive 1 tick per unique unit targeted by Rex, rather than a total of 7, which is the total number of spells Rex actually casts. So we'll see how that goes. I think Ezreal's still going to be played. I think he's still kind of a core combo piece of Legends of Runeterra. Him and Fiora are really 2 of the biggest champions, and to an extent, I guess, Maokai. But more so, Ezreal and Fiora have level up conditions that say, once I'm leveled up, I can kill you in 1 turn. And I think that's something the game needs, just at some level. We've got a Lee Sin complete rework. Lee Sin cost going down by 2, health going down by 2, level up becoming harder. but overall this is a massive buff. I think casting 1+ spell, especially because Lee Sin doesn't need to be on the board to level up, that's very easy for any deck running Lee Sin or running his support package. I think a lot of the time Lee Sin tended to be leveled up anyways by turn 5 or 6. So what they're really doing here is focusing on making sure that when you drop Lee Sin on 4, if you choose to play him on curve, he's not going to be leveled up just yet. He's still going to be kind of vulnerable. But like changing the Sonic Wave to be his spell really helps hammer home a sense of Lee Sin is an earlier, cheaper win condition. He's still got the same exact attack value, which means his Dragon's Rage is going to do the same amount of damage to the Nexus. So we're going to really have to see. I think it's crazy to think about just how good Lee Sin could be just as a count of these changes. He's still potentially a bit too slow, and we're going to have to see how he interacts with aggro decks, but even looking at something like Lee Sin Ezreal, that feels like a very natural pairing right now because you have the Lee Sin to come down early, provide a very strong early body, and just kind of help you pick off units and finish off the units that Ezreal's removal tools might not quite do enough for, so that you can kind of get... you use Lee Sin as a bridge to get to Ezreal's leveled up condition. So we're going to have to see how Lee Sin really ends up affecting the meta. Followers and spells nerfs. Warships, man. One of my favorite cards in the entire game just because of the incredible flavor. Flavor. I think Warships losing 1 attack is definitely necessary. It felt like one of the best 2-drops in the game. It was almost impossible to answer a Fleet Feather Tracker Warships type of curve that could kind of come down and just pick off one of your units for free or trade up the Fleet Feather for basically any 2-drop in the game. So even some of the more interesting turn 2 plays, which involved using the banked spell mana, could still be answered by that Warships and Fleet Feather Tracker. Something like the 3/3 spell from Demacia would be a really quick pickup. So I think it's a necessary nerf. I think removing the 1 face damage does hurt the card, but I think it's still going to be played, especially because Demacia loves to attack a lot, and they didn't actually change the support ability, which is what you really play the Warships for. Flash of Brilliance, they're just reverting the last nerf to him. They kind of decided, hey, it's not necessary. This is a card that's already been nerfed a few times. First, changing it from creating any spell to just creating a 6+ cost spell, and then a patch or 2 ago, they made it cost 4 in order to further nerf Heimer. Heimer died on that patch mostly due to other changes, but Flash of Brilliance definitely played a role in that, and I think reverting the nerf, now that we've seen that it's a healthy card by itself, reverting the nerf, making it still a net 0 cost spell, really helps tie in for Lux decks, especially running with Piltover and Zon, and the new 4-mana spell, Tri-Beam, whatever the last word is, I think is going to be really interesting to see with this Flash of Brilliance. The only downside being, Flash of Brilliance can't actually create that 4-mana spell, which will potentially be a win condition in these decks. So, we'll have to see how that pans out. Overgrown Snapvine gets 1 attack. I guess I see it. It's basically a card that will repeatedly fill your board with itself. And I think that's an interesting idea, but I don't think 1 attack is what it needs to really be bumped up. On it doesn't fit with Shadow Isles at all, but I would potentially like to see something like a barrier or a spell shield on the Snapvine, make you feel better about it dropping a Snapvine on turn 7 and feel more confident that it's going to stick, and then every time it resummons itself, it gets that barrier or that spell shield back. That's what feels really interesting to me. Moving on, we've got Crackshot Corsair, and man, Bilgewater Aggro is back on the menu. We'll get to Jagged Taskmaster in a bit, but I think this is probably going to be one of the strongest, most hated cards in the game after this patch. Crackshot Corsair is so strong already. It deals chip damage. It doesn't need to attack to get its ability off. It activates Plunder. It's a cheap unit. It is everything that Bilgewater wants in this tiny little aggressive package, and they just gave it double the amount of health it had to make it even harder to pick it off with any sort of one-attack challenger unit. The new Nightfall Drain 1, or even Vile Feast, they can't kill this now. Make It Rain can't kill this now, and that was seeing play in a lot of decks. Misfortune's leveled up ability can't kill it. My main prediction for this next patch, as we saw the Warships nerf already, I think Scouts are going to stay as one of the top meta decks, but I think they're going to shift away from the Bannerman Demacia package and more into this Bilgewater Plunder Aggro package. Just the idea of attacking every single turn, activating this Crackshot Corsair passive, it feels really strong to me, even just from a theory crafting phase. So that's kind of that is my safest prediction for what's going to happen with the new patch starting tomorrow. I think Bilgewater Demacia Scouts still top tier, using much more Bilgewater cards and cutting the Bannerman. Just seems like it's going to be really strong. I don't know if Jagged Taskmaster quite fits into that. They basically lowered the cost by 1, gave it -1/-1. The effect is fine. I think, if anything, it'll probably be run in Scouts for the sake of having just another 2-drop, but you're not going to care about its Plunder effect. The Plunder effect is meh anyways. You don't really care about getting one more attack on your weakest units. Like, it's not going to save you on turn 10 when you draw that Cythria. It's not going to save you if she's a 3-2 instead of a 2-2, or even if you draw all 3 of these Taskmasters, activate all 3 Plunders. It doesn't matter if she's a 5-2 instead of a 2-2. You just played a 1-mana card on turn 10. You're probably behind, and you're probably dead at that point. So I think if this sees play at all, it's going to be because it's a 2-mana, well-statted follower. It's not going to see play because of the effect. I will say, one interesting thing to think about this, Powder Monkeys. We'll leave it at that. Yordle Grifter with Allegiance, they basically just moved its Warning Shot creation over to the Allegiance. I like the change. I think Yordle Grifter always felt like one of the strongest of the Allegiance cards. Obviously, Bannerman has held that status for the longest time due to its team-wide buff and its very immediate effect. But getting this nerf onto Yordle Grifter was always kind of like second fiddle, and part of that is just the strength and cohesiveness of Bilgewater decks as a whole since they were released that really allowed Yordle Grifter to come out swinging and find a place in decks that were just mostly Bilgewater because they were good enough. Moving the Warning Shot to the Allegiance means it's really a lot harder to activate all of your Plunder cards. Riptide Rex gets a pretty sizable nerf based off this. Gangplank Sejuani gets a pretty sizable nerf off this because you would play this Yordle Grifter, you don't care about stealing a card that you probably won't even use in a lot of situations. You just wanted a Warning Shot on a 4-mana 3/3 body. And that is now less consistent. So I really like this change. I think it really helps push mono region decks, which I think are healthy for the game. I think mono region decks are one of the strictest deck building challenges they have it is the strictest deck building challenge they have right now outside of the Singleton Gauntlet. And so I think requiring requiring the singleton or the single region Bilgewater deck in order to really get a consistent Grifter off feels pretty good to me. Cygnus, the Moonstalker, gains +1/+1. I like the change. I don't love the change because I think Nightfall Aggro feels like one of the tools that doesn't need more strength in the late game. I would much rather see Nightfall Aggro be forced to kind of look outside its keyword for other cards that really fit well with it. I think the main reason they changed Cygnus is the payoff wasn't good enough. Giving him and an ally elusive for 1 round, half of the rounds you don't even care about that. You have to Nightfall to activate it in the first place, and having a 6-mana 4/2 in your deck in an aggro deck definitely felt pretty bad. So overall, I like the change. We'll have to see how that actually affects Nightfall decks. We'll actually see Cygnus in a little bit. He finishes off the Curve Topper for one of the decks I want to try out tonight. And we'll see if that deck gets any better tomorrow. Standard Gauntlet update. I love this change. I'm going to be playing this change. The short version of this is you're going to queue up with 3 different decks. Your opponents will queue up for 3 different decks. There will be kind of a draft phase where you ban one of your opponent's decks, your opponent bans one of your decks, and then each of you will pick based on which 2 decks you have left. I think the danger is that we potentially fall into a situation where there are 3 really good decks and everyone always just bans the same one out of the 3, or where there's really like 1 really good deck and that's banned every single game, and so you kind of play with the scraps of what's left. But this is basically Legends of Runeterra saying, we have the tools to host tournaments in our game. We are basically testing out this draft phase using the Gauntlet, and I am so excited for that. I'm really excited for in-client tournaments. I want to see a clash for Legends of Runeterra where you and 4 of your friends, or however many because it's a card game, just queue up, multi-deck, you play against other teams even, you go head-to-head just for a weekend, and you get, I don't know, it's hard to say rewards based off that because Legends of Runeterra is already so generous, but you get something, right? That entices me, that intrigues me. I'm excited to think about that. So I'm really happy about this change. New lab, welcome to the jungle. I can't really talk too much on this or how fun I think it'll be, just because we'll have to see what the jungle monsters and buff spells actually do. I think this is something I will try. I may not love it, but I love the labs. They're really fun, so we're gonna at least try this one out. Expeditions changes. These I'm really, just spoiler alert, I'm really happy with these. I think they're starting to take steps to not necessarily bring down Targon, but buff up the other regions, and you'll kind of see what I mean here. Call of the Mountain archetypes offering bonuses down, that's standard, that's the same thing they did with Rising Tides. It's kind of expected. That should in itself make expeditions a little bit more healthy because there will be less Targon offered. I think the one caveat is it's going to make Targon decks stronger because you won't have to play against other Targon decks. So for this patch especially, I would put a lot of emphasis on drafting very heavy aggressive decks that are going to run Targon decks over before they have a chance to stabilize. Shadow Isles Noxus Spiders, just Noxus Demacia aggro. Demacia with literally anything else, just less so that you can try and get Bannerman in your deck and activated. That's what you're going to want to look for in Expedition if you're not getting offered Targon. I'm going to try and do this pretty quickly, but I'm sorry if I ramble a bit on it. Afterlife added Ravenous Butcher and Vile Feast, and removed Mark of the Isles and Mist Call. 2 good cards added, 2 bad cards removed. Pretty good buff for Shadow Isles Afterlife. Collective Support added Mountain Sojourners, and removed Broadback Protector, Fledgling Stellacorn, and Silent Shadowseer. So they're removing 3 good buff targets in favor of adding the best support buff. Now, it baffled my mind when collective support did not include the Sojourners at release, so I'm happy to see it added. I think this archetype just got a lot stronger with the addition of Mountain Sojourners. So we're going to see some really, really synergistic, really good, aggressive support decks. I'm not sure if it'll be better than the late game Invoke with Aurelion Sol, but it's probably worth trying. Death's Door, we've got added some removal, added a discard card, and added Dead Bloom Wanderer just for a bit of early game. Removed the True Shot Barrage and Vile Feast. I think losing Vile Feast is a pretty big hit. That's a very good card, especially when you're trying to kill your own units. Adding the Black Spear is kind of a weak card just because it feels overcosted to me. So this one's about a net neutral, I would say. I think True Shot Barrage becoming Tri-Beam feels like a buff overall because Tri-Beam actually summons you that unit. So even if you're playing it to deal 1 and summon a 1-cost unit, this is the type of archetype that will have other tools to use that garbage unit. Fishbones, just adding 2 of the Targon 1-drops, which does bump up that archetype because those are 2 very quality 1-drops. Luminous Dusk, added Atrocity, removed Black Spear, Sojourners, and Shroud of Darkness. Losing Shroud of Darkness is interesting. I'm going to double check this before I say something that it's not. Okay. It is not the spell I thought it was, and it's actually a spell I have never seen played at all. So, yeah. Removing that card from what kind of felt like a weaker archetype makes sense. Sojourners didn't really synergize it with it. Black Spear was again a weaker card, so this is a pretty good buff towards the Nightfall Aggro. Moonlit Heist, we've got added Chum the Waters and Prowling Cutthroat, which are a pair of Plunder activators. Removed Jailbreak, Shell Shocker, and Star Shepherd. So basically removed some of the 1-drop package that was presumably being put in for its use with... already forgotten the name, for its use with Taskmaster, and kind of replacing those with more Plunder activators. That feels like a buff to me. Otherworldly Creatures, this one they've mentioned they're just trying to dilute the pool a little bit, so they've added Ember Maiden specifically to, they've added Ember Maiden, Startled Stomper, Take Heart, and Yeti Yearling. Startled Stomper is basically just them saying, here's a 2-mana 2/3 that you don't really want in your control deck. The other 3 are cards that are saying, we are specifically hitting Freljord with this change. We think Trundle's package is too strong, especially when Trundle is combined with Targon. That's when it really starts to feel overpowering, because Freljord has so many great ramp tools. Trundle kind of acts as that big mid-game body to bridge you to your Aurelion Sol. So that feels interesting. Radiant Dawn, adding the 4-mana 2/7 heal card, and Sunblessed Vigor, which is grant an ally 2 health for 2 mana, removing Moondreamer and Sojourners. This change feels important. Moondreamer was in too many archetypes. It was warping the meta. It needs to stay in packages like Otherworldly Creatures, because it just, like, that's what the package is supposed to do. But the fact that it leached into Radiant Dawn just made it too common. Shadows of Dust, here we're just removing a few... see, this is interesting. These are 3 cards that I feel like are really strong in the right deck. I think Fading Memories is the worst of them. Encroaching Shadows is really good with ephemeral units. Doing something like doubling a Shark Chariot, my favorite card in the entire game, will just give you so much value for it. So we'll have to see what that does to the Shadows and Dust archetyped. Suit Up added the Tusk Raider. That makes sense. It's an archetype about building big minions. Here's a card that helps you build big minions. And the Black Mist removed Dusk Rider for Atrocity. Just removed a subpar Nightfall card for a great Final Reach burn card. Cross-Shard Friend Challenge. You can now challenge anyone, anywhere in the world, as long as they're your friend. Love that change. Empyrean and Dragonling now have the Dragon type. This shouldn't matter at all, but I'm really interested to see if a Targon Ionia Dragon package becomes meta next, not next expansion, but after the next few sets of cards drop. I think Dragon is the archetype that we've seen a little bit of support for with cards like Involius Vox and the Sky's Descent, but it really feels like it's missing that big card to tie it all together, and I think we're going to see that in Shyvana when she comes for Demacia later in the year. So I'm excited for that. Nightfall card visual effects were taking excessively long. Thank goodness. Oh, that was such a jarring bug. Fixed an issue where Tarek would incorrectly gain level up progress. We actually found out this was changed on stream the other day. So they hotfixed that in. Fixed an issue where Hush would delay stun effects. I saw that on Reddit. Fixed an issue where Supernova would represent inaccurate results. I didn't know about that. Presumably, Supernova is the 8-mana Celestial spell that reads, if you behold a Celestial card, obliterate all enemies with 3 or less attack. So presumably, that was either not correctly calculating attack, or it wasn't... yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. Fixed an issue where Zenith Blade wouldn't be revealed when drawn off its Daybreak, like that change. Fixed an issue where cards weren't correctly counting towards Ezreal's level up. Flame Chompers weren't being correctly buffed by Vision when both discarded. Aurelian Soul level 2 would reduce the cost of opponent's Celestial cards, that was funny. And various minor big bug fixes for Deck Builder and the Rewards panel. And that is everything. That is all of the changes that we're having with the patch tomorrow. I'm really excited. I think a lot of what they're doing is really good. I'm not just excited for the patch tomorrow, I'm really excited with the direction they're taking this game in. And yeah, we're gonna see in 2 weeks just what we see for these patch 1.11 balance changes, stuff like Aurelian Soul, stuff like Hush. But for now, that's me. Thanks for watching.